What up, everybody? Today, I'd like to talk to you about forgiveness. That was the topic of my bishop's sermon, my female bishop's sermon yesterday. That's an issue we all have to face in our lives. It's not always easy to forgive. Some of us find it hard to forgive. Some of us have the past whirling around inside of our heads. Whenever we see the person who's done something wrong to us, we're constantly reminded of the wrong they did to us, and we find it hard to turn the other cheek. We find it hard to love them instead of hate them. We find it hard to even speak to them. We find it hard to be in the same room as them. We can't do this through our own strength, but we can do it through God's strength. We'll find when we choose the route of forgiveness that we feel better inside. We feel more loving. We feel less depressed. It's a well-known fact that unforgiveness can lead to a shortening of your life. The best way to deal with depression is to walk in forgiveness instead of bitterness. Unforgiveness can give you ulcers. It can be like a rope that's knotted up inside of your chest. Now, when you forgive someone, it doesn't mean that you forget what they did. You just remember it differently. My grandma used to say that she forgives but she never forgets. Some people may think that she was just making excuses to hold on to her bitterness, but just because she remembered what happened to her doesn't mean that she is a bitter woman, or she was a bitter woman, because she's gone to heaven now. Pastor David Jeremiah talks about not nursing or rehearsing what people do to us. The more we think about the evil that people do to us, the more it takes root inside of us. My dad used to talk about hugging a grudge. If you hug a grudge, it squeezes your neck and strangles you and chokes you. It's better to think about the good things that people do for us rather than the bad things that they do to us or for us. Now, just because you're loving someone doesn't mean you have to hang out with them all the time. Just because you're choosing to forgive them doesn't mean you have to hang out with them all the time. Janamara Shane chose to forgive the guy that poured petrol on him and lit him alight, but he felt like it wouldn't achieve anything by meeting the guy, even though initially he decided to meet the guy in jail. It's less important that you have a face-to-face confrontation with the person who's done something wrong to you than it is that you have peace inside your heart. If you can think of them without hating them, without seeking revenge, then you've healed. Some people heal quickly and some people heal slowly. Don't feel bad if it's taking you longer to heal than it takes some other people to heal. Just be willing to be healed. The longer you hold on to bitterness, the more you let anger and hatred control you, the worse you feel inside. It affects your relationships. Say, for example, you're angry at a woman. You may find yourself hating a woman or being disrespectful to women or having a bad attitude towards women, even if you act nice to their faces. Say a guy did something wrong to you. It would be easy to treat all guys the same way just because of that one guy that misrepresented the way guys should be. Men and women are designed to love each other, not to hate each other. We're meant to make this world a better place, not a worse place. It's too easy to turn this world into a place of war instead of a place of peace. It's too easy to let bitterness take a hold of us and take over us. It's too easy for us to make mountains out of molehills. There would be less wars in the world if there was more forgiveness. Because people hugged grudges against the Jews for killing Christ. That's how we ended up with the Holocaust. Because there was jealousy between the Hutus and Tutsis, a situation created by the colonial powers who had a policy of dividing and conquering, setting one tribe against the other. There was bloodshed and millions of Hutus and Tutsis ended up dead. The same thing has happened in Sri Lanka between the Sinhalese and the Tamils. We should always choose love over hatred. Now I'd like to talk about judgment. When a woman goes to a party, she should never have to feel like it's a normal thing for people to look at her or say things about her or say things to her face that are negative. We should never expect that we will hear people saying negative things about us. Why don't people keep these negative things to themselves? Why do people get delighted by others' grief? Why do people like to make fun of the way other people are dressed? There's a way of dressing that attracts the wrong kind of attention from the opposite sex. Just because somebody dresses in a way we don't approve of, we've got no right to tell them how to dress. That's between them and God. God can do the convicting. I've seen my friends being paid out and made fun of and been made to feel immoral because of showing their cleavage in their photos. I've heard about guys being thought of as loose because they wear muscle shirts. Just because somebody dresses in a certain way, it doesn't mean that they have loose morals. Not everybody dresses with the intent to provoke. If people are working as strippers and prostitutes and in the pornographic industry, they dress to attract the kind of attention that causes people to commit sin. But not everybody that dresses in a way that's similar or can be associated with these kinds of people is intending to create that effect. Some people just imitate certain styles because they like the way it looks. Hitler imitated the peasant's way of dressing. That doesn't mean you're a Nazi if you dress in the same peasant outfit as Hitler, as long as you don't put swastikas on it. That would be awfully suspect. When Hindus use swastikas, it doesn't mean the same thing that it does to Nazis, although both symbols are occult symbols. For the Hindus it's a symbol of peace, and for the Nazis it's a symbol of hatred. It's crazy that we live in a world where a woman is made to feel ashamed for the way she dresses. It's stupid that women are blamed for rape and molestation because of the way they dress. It's stupid that some people think so backwards. It's crazy that we live in the world we live in. A guy will go after a woman regardless of how she's dressed. Some of the biggest users of pornography live in countries where the women veil their faces. A glimpse of a woman's hand can be just as attractive as a glimpse of her face. I remember Jerry Seinfeld joking about if men and women ran around naked, then what would seem attractive and enticing to a man would be to see a woman without her earring. I think it's stupid that we have shows where people date each other naked or get married before they see each other. Although it's not immoral, I don't see how you can love someone before you've met them face to face or before you've seen what they look like. You need time to build up a relationship. It's crazy how we judge others based on the way they dress. It's crazy how many women can't get ahead in the business world unless they wear clothes that cover themselves from neck to just below the knee. It's also crazy that these type of outfits are the most popular among women, yet fashion designers still push to try and make women wear short skirts or short shorts. Of course, these trends have taken off, but that doesn't mean there wouldn't be a demand for more modest dress if there was a greater supply. It's also stupid how children and adults are exploited in sweatshops when fashion companies can easily afford to pay people decent prices to make outfits. Even if they have one less holiday in a tropical island, it's worth it for the sake of a peaceful and more joyous world. Now I'd like to talk about Kanye's track listing switcheroo. Originally, Kanye was supposed to come out with an album called Jesus is King. He's still supposed to come out with an album with that title, but he switched up some of the track listing. He's got a song called LA Monsters. I'm not sure what the lyrical content is. He's got a song called New Body, which has been changed. The title has been changed since it was originally released as a single since the song was originally released with that title featuring Nicki Minaj. The song featuring Nicki Minaj features swearing. If Kanye's still swearing on his albums, then that says to me that he's not ready to change. I don't think he should release Christian albums or albums with Christian content unless it's 100% Christian. Tone made this same mistake in the past. He had an album that was half Christian, half non-Christian. I do praise the Lord for the people that have been coming to God because of his services. I love the fact that God is able to work all things together for the good of those who are the called according to his purpose. I know God is using Kanye, even if Kanye doesn't call himself a servant of God. I hope he hasn't gotten scared by negative feedback preceding the release of his new album. He doesn't seem the type to be a chicken about what other people think. If he was a chicken, then he wouldn't have grabbed that microphone off Taylor Swift. But there's a difference between standing up for African American representation in the music industry and standing up for believers in Jesus. Even though he's called himself a Christian in Christian Dior, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's following after Christ with his whole heart. Of course, we all make mistakes as Christians, but we should try and live a holy life, and we should make sure the way we conduct ourselves in public is representing Christ. There's a difference between occasionally slipping up and living a lifestyle of sinfulness. If you're known for continually disrespecting women and making a mockery of Christianity, you should probably just drop the microphone rather than continuing to call yourself a Christian rapper. In fairness, Kanye hasn't announced himself as a Christian rapper. He said he isn't trying to turn atheists into believers in his song Jesus Walks. But he's also referenced the fact that God is basically okay with him because he released the song Jesus Walks, so he's been on the fence about that song. I do like what he's done to encourage people with dark skin to feel good about themselves, and how he has been innovative in rap. I don't mind having been compared to him in the past, even though I wouldn't say I rap anything like him. Now I'd like to talk about Mrs. Bieber's scary face. Justin Bieber's wife has come out saying that she would dress in a Halloween costume and she would dress her children in Halloween costumes. I don't think Christians should go around saying Happy Halloween. Now, I think it's good for Christians to have praise parties on Halloween, but they shouldn't call those praise parties Halloween parties. Although it's not bad to dress as a villain, a comic book supervillain, it's not something I'd recommend. Why would you want to imitate evil? It's less bad to imitate Harley Quinn and Joker than it is to imitate vampires and werewolves and zombies. Because a psychopath is just somebody who chose the wrong path, as opposed to an evil creature that thinks and does nothing but evil. Or a brainless creature that has no choice but to do evil because it doesn't know how to think for itself. I definitely think that Christians shouldn't get involved in the trick side of Halloween. And if they collect treats, they shouldn't agree with someone when they say Happy Halloween. They should say, we're here because we want to praise the Lord. They should take it as an opportunity to witness and stand up for the gospel. I've been mistaken for a Halloween character before when I came to somebody's door and I was wearing a dark hat. I don't know who that could have possibly been mistaken for. It's funny how some people look like freaky characters when they're just being themselves, and others have to go out of their way to look outlandish and look ghoulish. It's kind of sad that we live in a world that glorifies Satanism. I don't think it's right for Christians to want to be spooky. Why would we want to scare people if we're representing faith? We're not supposed to be representing fear. We're not supposed to be slaves to fear. We're not supposed to be making a champion out of fear. We should make a champion out of faith. We should make a virtue out of people feeling good about themselves instead of being terrified. Why are people so addicted to horror movies? Why do people like to chew their knuckles and be thrilled and be terrified? What is it about our psyche that drives us to want to be scared? Perhaps some people are going through a depressing time in their lives, or they're being abused, or they just have a boring life and they think that being scared will give them excitement. But I'd rather have sweet dreams than nightmares. I don't know why people would want to give themselves nightmares. I've been that stupid person in the past. I've walked down that road. My main draw card to watching Queen of the Damned wasn't the fact that Aaliyah was playing a vampire, but the fact that Aaliyah was in the movie. That's why I wanted to watch Romeo Must Die as well. I wouldn't recommend that movie either, just because it's got sex scenes, and it's bad to have movies that portray people having sex before marriage. I've watched movies where people have sex before marriage, and I've seen those kinds of TV shows, but as a Christian, I know God wants a higher standard for me. It's too easy to slip into the world's ways. It's too easy to compromise our convictions for the sake of convenience. It's too easy to make excuses for evil. God calls us to be in the world, not of the world. He calls us to live a higher standard than the world's standard. I did watch the movie Scary Movies, and I thought it was funny at the time. It was crazy how this dude thought his girlfriend was more attractive when he was pretending to be his male friend. Some people have messed up heads. I hope there's nobody like that in real life. And yes, I have to confess to watching Jawbreaker because I had a crush on Rose McGowan. But I've changed. I'm not the same person that I used to be. And I don't want to make a virtue out of vice. I don't want people to walk down the same paths I've walked down. If I ever have children, I want to protect them from the evil in this world. I don't want to encourage them to indulge in it. It's good to use Halloween as a time to glorify the Lord and go to war on your knees. This world needs Jesus. Now I'd like to talk about Kim Kardashian West getting baptized. She went to Armenia. That's where her people come from. That's where Benny Hinn comes from too. I hope this is a sign of genuine change on the part of Mrs. Kim Kardashian West. I don't really know a lot about her. I know she's had a lot of babies. I know she's been possibly traumatized by her time spent being kidnapped. That would be horrendous for anybody to have to go through. I know that she's had some awfully short relationships in the past. One barely lasted beyond her marriage. I'm glad she's found happiness with Kanye. I praise God that God's used her to get a woman off death row. I don't know whether that woman deserved to get off death row, but I'm glad she's been given a chance at a better life. I think there's possibly lots of people on death row who could be a better use to society if they were allowed to get out there in the world and serve the community. Obviously, they would probably need to be watched by police for the rest of their lives, because it would be hard to trust somebody like that. And there's probably certain jobs that they shouldn't be allowed to have, like working in schools. But then if God's called somebody to work with children, then the children might be robbed of an opportunity to be blessed if God's able to use them to minister to them in that fashion. I guess as long as they have supervision, that's the main thing. I guess Kanye has been a positive influence on Kim Kardashian's life. I know both of them have had problems having potty mouths in the past. Perhaps their mutual past experience of having some kind of Christianity in their background might be helping each other to find the way, the truth, and the life. I'd like to see Kanye apologize for calling himself Jesus. I know he didn't say I'm Jesus, but when he called himself Jesus, it's almost like he was pretending to be Jesus. And that turned a lot of people off him. He wasn't the first person to do it. Before him, Ra Digga came out with Jesus, and Lily Allen's also come out with Jesus, thinking she's original. She was intending to copy Kanye, obviously. I'm assuming she doesn't know of the existence of Ra Digga. It's likely that she might have heard of Busta Rhymes or Mariah Carey. They don't necessarily hear all of America's music in the UK, and America definitely doesn't hear all of the music that's produced by the UK. Lily Allen retired, then she came out of retirement. Kanye West had mental health issues. I don't think Kim Kardashian ever had mental health issues, although she probably had some kind of post-traumatic stress disorder after experiencing being kidnapped. That would drive anybody out of their mind. It's interesting how many members in her family have dated African Americans. One of them had an involvement with the Jackson children that comprised the group Free T. And it's interesting how Kim Kardashian and Kanye both had involvement with music. It'd be interesting to see if Kim Kardashian makes a gospel album after being baptized. A lot of men have chosen to stumble after looking at her pictures and watching her TV shows. It's not necessarily her fault, but I believe that if we have an opportunity to take pictures and make money out of them, that we should do so in a way that can't be used as an opportunity to cause marriages to become wrecked. We all know how Photoshop changes the appearance of women's bodies. They never look anything like they appear in their pixelated form. It's a shame that any woman thinks she has to change her body to look like a celebrity. Celebrities don't necessarily go out of their way to encourage other people to mutilate their bodies in order to imitate them. It's just a sad side effect that comes as a result of the limelight that they're given. I hope that we see a brand new Kim Kardashian. I hope we see a Kim Kardashian that's set on fire for Jesus. I hope she stands up for the persecuted church. I hope she uses her hands and feet to be the hands and feet of Jesus. In the past, the present, and the future. She has been the hands and feet of Jesus in the past, but in the present and the future, she has to keep up the same track record. She has a responsibility because she's a role model. Little girls look up to her, they want to imitate her, they want to be just like her. I've had friends who model themselves on her. They want to be the dark-skinned version of her. We shouldn't want to be imitators of Kim Kardashian. We should just want to be imitators of Christ. Now I'd like to talk about the Houston Rockets supporter that showed support for the situation in Hong Kong and then withdrew his support because the NBA put out a tweet saying that they fully support China. So he had to double back on himself. I don't know if he was threatened with losing his job. It's a shame that we live in a world where basketballers aren't allowed to speak their mind. People should focus on how he plays on the court, not what he says on his computer. Even if he insults everybody in the NBA, it shouldn't matter. He should just be allowed to speak his mind. It's crazy that we live in a world that's so opinionated and so quick to judge others. It's stupid that we live in a world where basketballers aren't allowed to express themselves. I sympathize with the people protesting for democracy in Hong Kong. I don't like the fact that their protests are disrupting incoming and outgoing flights from the Hong Kong airport. I hope they get what they're fighting for, which is democracy in Hong Kong, and more specifically freedom of religion, because they don't have freedom of religion in China. But they do have it in Hong Kong as part of the handover agreement. The Hong Kong governor the people that were placed in charge of Hong Kong were allowed to run Hong Kong differently from mainland China. The Chinese government has since gone back on this agreement. I believe that every country should have freedom of religion. This means freedom of worship, freedom to worship the God you worship in your temple, freedom to worship God in your home, freedom to talk about your religion on the streets, freedom to talk about your religion in schools, freedom to pray in schools, freedom to convert someone from another religion to your religion, freedom to speak your mind about sexuality where your religious beliefs conflict with others' religious beliefs, and where your religious beliefs conflict with others' views on sexuality. We should live in a world where we're free to coexist, where we shouldn't have to fear for our lives just because we want to speak our mind, where we shouldn't have to fear that we'll lose our career, that we won't be able to feed our wives and children or our husbands and children just because of what we believe about religion or sexuality. We shouldn't live in a world where people are judged more for their off-court behavior than their off-court, or we shouldn't live in a world where people are judged more for their off-court or off-field behavior than they're judged for their on-court and on-field behavior. People should be able to draw a line of demarcation between the behavior of sports people when they're playing sport and how they behave when they're not playing sport. What they think and believe should have no bearing on whether they're allowed to keep their endorsements or whether they're allowed to be on national or state teams or county teams. We used to live in a world where this was par for the course, but now we live in a world where people's offline behavior seems to be the benchmark by which their careers are determined to be prolonged, or whether somebody pulls the plug on them. It makes you laugh at the inconsistency with which this cancel culture is applied to people. Some people seem to get away with murder and others are stopped in their tracks for the slightest behavior or speech bubble or thing that they said that's considered as an indiscretion. Now I'd like to talk about Polish men. Every 5 minutes, a child is killed by domestic violence. In the time it takes between me sharing this topic and sharing my next topic, unless God intervenes, a little baby boy or girl will have been killed by domestic violence. If you want to help change the situation, please go to mypolishedman.com/Daniel-Wiseman and support me in my quest to help eradicate the world of this evil. My Polished Man mostly focuses on the behavior of men because statistically more men commit acts of domestic violence than women, or more acts of domestic violence by men are reported than acts of domestic violence by women. Some women commit acts of domestic violence and people don't believe them when they try and reach out for help. They automatically assume that it's the man's fault. I'm choosing to focus on the men though. As guys, we can definitely do better at controlling our tempers. If you have to get a punching bag, get a punching bag. If you're not a creative person like me, then go and take a walk. If you are a creative person like me, or even if you aren't, just try to write or draw and see if it helps. It helped my next door neighbor when she was dealing with her cousin who molested her. She painted a picture of him being shot. You may have to paint a violent picture in order for you to get the violence out of your head. The lead singer of Tool said that if it wasn't for music, he'd probably get out there and kill somebody. He spent days on end without sleeping. It's better to punch a hole in a wall than to punch a hole in somebody's face, or to punch somebody's face. If you have to walk out of a room in order to get the anger out of you, go and walk out of the room. If you have to run out of the room. Do whatever it takes to stop yourself from exploding. And find someone to talk to. Don't just let it bubble up inside of you. The longer you let anger bubble up inside of you, the worse you get, the more it accumulates inside of you until it explodes like a volcano. We may think we're okay, we may tell ourselves that nothing's wrong, we may fool everyone else in the world that we're okay, but we're not fooling ourselves. You know who you are when you lie down on your pillow and sleep at night. You know, when you feel like something's come over you, when you feel like an evil beast has taken over you, when your voice gets deeper, when you start to raise your voice, when your fists start to fly, you know when you're out of control, when you've had too much to drink, you know your limits. You know when somebody ticks you off, when somebody pushes you over the edge. You know what it's like to be pushed too far. The best place you can turn to help, the best place you can turn for help is to turn to God. Talk to a friend, and if you don't have any friends, go and make a friend. Take that scary leap and put yourself out there. You might face rejection, but it's worth it. It's worth it to take the risk. If you never find love from anybody else, please know that God loves you and Jesus loves you and He died on the cross for you. Please know that you don't have to walk the path of anger. You can walk the path of peace. You can walk the path of joy. You don't have to be all bent out of shape and all hateful and feeling messed up inside. You can find peace. You don't have to walk the path of war and confusion forever. Now I'd like to talk about coffee breath versus smoking breath. If I had a choice, I'd rather have somebody breathe their coffee smell into my face than breathe smoke into my lungs any day. I have asthma because of my dad, but it's also possibly a contributing factor that I have asthma because my mother worked in the office with a woman who smoked while she was pregnant. Yes, my mother could have gone home and chosen not to work, but paid maternity leave isn't necessarily an option in every workplace, and our family wasn't able to afford to take paid maternity leave. Also, why should my mother have had to leave the office? This woman should have been more sensitive and smoked her cigarettes outside of the office. This was in an era when it was more acceptable for people to smoke in public. It's becoming less acceptable in today's society. Yet, even though cigarettes are being pushed as unacceptable, we are seeing a push towards vaping, which is just as bad as taking marijuana. It's crazy that we live in a world where people kill their brain cells with kava and marijuana. Some people do it out of ignorance. Some people know what they're doing to themselves and they still choose to do it anyway. If you're a Christian and you're taking marijuana, you're allowing yourself to be influenced by the devil. You have to be careful what you allow inside your mind. You have to watch over the gates of your nostrils, just as you watch over the gates of your eyes and ears and mouth. You have to be careful what you allow out of your mouth and what you allow into your lungs. We are influenced by the world around us. So many people are given asthma as a result of secondary smoking or passive smoking. We can't always choose who we sit next to when we have to wait for a bus. I've seen people lighting up cigarettes just as a train leaves the station. They were yelled at by the conductor to put out their cigarette, which they did promptly because obviously they didn't want to get kicked off the train. But in the second it took to light that cigarette, that smoke had spread throughout the train carriage. I used to get hugs from people who smoked in church. It used to make me sick to the stomach. That doesn't mean that I hate those people. I just hate smelling like smoke. The only smoke I want to smell like is a campfire when I'm roasting my marshmallows. I believe that every government around the world should make drugs illegal. As in, they should make marijuana illegal and they should make cigarettes illegal because smoking gives you lung cancer and marijuana kills your brain cells and kava kills your brain cells. It's irresponsible for any government to increase imports of a drug or a root vegetable that, when crushed up, will create a narcotic side effect. I can only assume that this is ignorance on the part of our government. Yes, coffee is addictive too, and if you drink 75 cups of coffee, you will die. If you continually drink Red Bulls or energy drinks, after a certain amount of time you will die. It's a cumulative effect. It won't happen straight away, but it will happen eventually. We have to be wise in what we allow to enter our bodies. You wouldn't be stupid and swallow the spider with a black body and bright green legs that's resting on the corner of my MacBook Rose Gold Air. So don't stick anything in your body that you know is going to harm you. You wouldn't drink washing up liquid, so why would you stick something poisonous inside your lungs? It doesn't make any sense. It may make you feel like you're floating on a cloud, but it will cause you pain in the long run. It will affect your relationship with God. We don't need to get elevated by anything but His pure heart. Now I would like to talk about my crush. I love spending time with her. I find myself being elevated whenever I spend time with her. I love learning about her way of looking at the world. I hate it when I hear about others taking advantage of her and causing her pain. I know it wouldn't solve anything, but I want to smash the faces of those who say nasty things to her, or I want to give them a piece of my mind, because I know that smashing faces doesn't solve any problems. It just creates more problems than it solves. I love the fact that she's a genius at maths. I love the fact that she loves learning. I love learning too, but I don't like learning about maths. I believe that opposites attract. I've been attracted in the past to people that are into all the same things as me, but that isn't necessarily helpful for a good relationship. It works for some people, but it doesn't work for everyone. I may not have found the love of my life, but I've definitely found my best friend in the whole wide world. I hope our friendship lasts forever. I love the fact that we can talk about anything under the sun. I was really careful not to correct her this week. I hate the fact that I can't always hear everything she said. I just missed one thing she said this week. I feel sorry for her when she has to lift heavy boxes full of files. I wish I could help her out. I'd volunteer to lift those files for free. I'd do anything to see her smile. I love the fact that she doesn't just want to give some crummy gift to kids for her Operation Christmas Child shoebox. She wants to give the best. She wants to push the boat out and spend a significant amount of money on helping to make children's lives better. She wanted to get pencils to help children. She's done so in the past. She had to skip it this year because she couldn't spend the amount that she wanted to spend. I would have given kids sloppy seconds, but she just wants to give them the best. I love the fact that she's bold and she gives speeches in public. I love the fact that she gives speeches to encourage people. I love the fact that she helps her friends sort out their issues. I love the fact that she gave up 40 hours to do 40-hour famine. I used to be fussy about 40-hour famine. I used to think that if you gave up something other than food, you were faking it and not doing it for real. But if I knew that she was doing something other than food, I would still support her and say, "You're doing amazing." I used to be fussy about people doing it for computers because it's not really that much of a luxury to have a computer, although it is a luxury. But it's not an essential thing that you need to survive, whereas food is. And it is harder to give up food than it is to give up anything else. I really commend her for being the only person in her grade to do 40-hour famine. It doesn't matter how much she raised. What's important is that she was serving the Ancient of Days. I love the fact that she loves singing. We've got that in common. She's not that confident with her English, but she is better at it than she thinks she is. It's not like English is her second language. If people have English as a second language, sometimes it can be hard for them to get a grasp on the English language, but that isn't always the case. I love that she is passionate about shining her light in the darkness. She chose to do the university masterclass for our church conference. She sees the importance of filling your mind with Jesus when you're young, so you'll be able to nurture the growth of that seed of faith inside your heart when you get older. It's too easy to lose your faith when you're out in the world and you're hit with all these different ideas, but she's already prepared herself by doing philosophy class. I'd like to talk about why Anthony Albanese is picking on Brian Houston, but I really don't know that much about it, so I'm just gonna say that he's doing it and just say that I wish he'd stop. I'd like to talk about Babylon Bee. Babylon Bee has gotten attacks from New York Times as well as government bodies for supposedly speaking lies, but those people just can't tell the difference between parody or satire and lies. They weren't intentionally setting out to deceive people. Some people made the mistake of thinking the Onion was a serious paper. There was an Indian newspaper that thought that it was a genuine news site, so they printed one of their stories and they thought it was real. Some people just don't have a sense of humor. That's the world we live in. Or some people just don't have the same sense of humor that we have. I can see why Stephen Furtick got upset when Babylon B said that he'd left his church. That really didn't make any kind of sense to me. I think they were obviously pulling people's legs. Sometimes people stuff up when they attempt to be satirical. I believe that was one of those cases, even though it was hilarious and people were laughing their heads off. There is a way you can do damage with your words. There's a way to be hurtful without being harmful. It's hard to just be friends sometimes with a woman, for me, without falling in love with her. I guess I'm learning, slowly but surely, to appreciate the character and personality of a woman instead of just appreciating her for her physical appearance. I have to fight within myself to not be abrasive and not tell people to shut up when they've been talking for a long period of time. It's stupid that I have to have this fight because naturally within myself I prefer to be the one in a relationship that does less talking and more listening. But there's a devil that tries to take over my mind and tries to control my thoughts and tries to pervert them and turn them upside down. There's a devil that whispers evil things about women and evil things about people of other ethnicities and evil things about myself. And I have to constantly fight to tell the difference between what is me and what is the devil and what is God. I want to imitate the nature of Christ. I love it when I get to hang out with the woman I love. I love it when I get to find out more about her life. I love it when I get to know her better. I love it when she shares her life with me. I love it when she talks about her life and says the exact things I was going to ask her questions about, almost as if she can read my head and predict precisely what question I'm going to ask. I love that I've got somebody I can talk to every week. I love that I don't have to be lonely. I love that I don't have to wander through this world alone. I love that I've got a companion on this road of life. I love that you've placed a woman of God in my life. I love that you've given me a friend who loves you. I love that you've given me a friend with an understanding, compassionate heart who encourages me to be more generous. I'm normally more generous to people when I've seen their face than I am to perfect strangers. My heart was moved yesterday in church when I heard about this lady in the Philippines called Jolene, who used to live in a cardboard box, but she is now married to a Westerner. She is now helping out the little children that live on the rubbish dump where she used to live. We may not all be in a position to go across the world and help somebody who lives on a rubbish dump, but we can all use our money to help change the world, and we can all use our smiles to lift somebody's spirit. Just a smile or a wave or a hello can make somebody's day and make a difference between them killing themselves and clinging on to life for one more day. Peace out!